The Oak Ridge County Animal Shelter was struggling. It was chronically understaffed and overburdened. A place where good intentions were worn down by the harsh reality of budget cuts and a facility that was too old and too small for the sheer number of animals it had to manage. The stress wasn't just visible on the faces of the staff, it was reflected in the eyes of the animals. In the last kennel of the intake wing, a Doberman pinscher who had arrived 3 days ago trembled. His name was Maverick. He had been picked up wandering near the highway. With no microchip and no collar, he showed the classic signs of abuse, flinching at sudden movements, cowering when a hand was raised, and shaking at loud noises. Jenny Winters, the shelter's volunteer coordinator, had taken special care with Maverick's case. Her notes on his intake form were clear: handle with kindness. No sudden movements, speak softly and respect his space. But on that Tuesday morning, Jenny was out sick, and the shelter was as short-staffed as ever. Marcus Davis, a recent hire with minimal training, was growing frustrated with the overwhelming workload. He was assigned to clean Maverick's kennel. "Come on, move it," Marcus snapped, trying to get Maverick to move to one side of the kennel. Maverick froze, his eyes wide, his body rigid. When Marcus reached for his collar, the dog shrank further into the corner. In that moment, the shelter's security camera captured everything. Out of patience with the morning's difficulties, Marcus swung his hand and delivered a sharp slap to Maverick's muzzle. "I said move." The Doberman yelped and pressed himself against the wall, trembling violently, his eyes filled with pure terror. Marcus finished cleaning in a hurry and moved on to the next kennel. Unaware that his actions had been recorded, he made one more mistake. He failed to properly latch the door to Maverick's kennel. It was a small oversight that would trigger a chain of events no one could have predicted. 30 minutes later, Eleanor Rodriguez, a volunteer, arrived for her shift, a 20-year-old pre-vet student. She had read Maverick's intake notes and had specifically requested to spend time with him. She had brought high-value treats, planning to simply sit near his kennel to acclimate him to a positive human presence. When Eleanor approached the kennel, she was met with a strange sight. Maverick was gone. Her heart pounding, she quickly checked the other kennels, wondering if someone had moved him. But the Doberman was nowhere to be found. She immediately alerted the front desk, and a facility-wide search began. Later, a review of the security camera footage would reveal the truth. After Marcus left, Maverick had remained frozen for nearly 15 minutes. Then, slowly, the terrified dog nudged the unlatched door with his nose. When it swung open, he crept out, head low, and slunk down the hallway, avoiding all human contact until he found an unlocked supply closet and hid himself behind a pile of old blankets. When Eleanor found him, Maverick was curled into the smallest possible ball, shaking uncontrollably. Her next actions would not only change Maverick's life but would also begin to unravel a pattern of abuse that had gone unnoticed for far too long. Eleanor moved slowly, keeping her body low in a non-threatening posture. "It's okay, buddy," she whispered, respecting his space. Instead of trying to drag him out, she sat down on the floor with her back to the wall and simply waited. After 15 minutes of silence, she took out her phone and began to quietly read a story aloud, a technique she had learned for familiarizing traumatized animals with a calm human presence. An hour passed before Maverick showed the first response. His trembling gradually subsided. He started to flick quick glances at Eleanor before looking away again. Progress was measured in these tiny moments. When Tony Grayson, the shelter manager, found them, he was initially irritated that Eleanor hadn't immediately reported finding the dog. But his expression softened when he saw Maverick, on his own, inching slightly closer to the sound of Eleanor's voice. "How did he get out?" Tony asked quietly. "I don't know," Eleanor answered, "but he's much more frightened than when I saw him yesterday. Something must have terrified him." Tony sighed. "I'll check the security cameras. Can you stay with him until we figure out how to safely get him back to a kennel?" The security footage left Tony speechless. It clearly showed Marcus striking Maverick and then failing to secure the kennel door. More disturbingly, a review of the past month's footage revealed that this was not an isolated incident. Marcus had been seen handling several other animals with excessive force. Tony immediately suspended Marcus pending an investigation and called Jenny. "Despite her being sick, we have a situation. I need your expertise on the Maverick case. He seems to trust Eleanor a little, but we need to get him out of that closet." That evening, they managed to move Maverick into a quiet office, which would serve as his temporary living space. Eleanor stayed late, continuing to read to him from a respectful distance, helping the Doberman slowly acclimate to his new surroundings. "What happens now?" Eleanor asked Jenny, who had come in despite her illness. "We document everything," Jenny said grimly. "We need to check every animal Marcus handled for signs of abuse. She hesitated, then added, "But there's something you should know about Maverick." Jenny pulled up Maverick's intake photo on her tablet. "Notice anything?" Eleanor studied the photo, then looked across the room at the dog. "The markings, around his eyes and muzzle. They're different." Jenny nodded. "This isn't Maverick, based on these unique markings and a small scar on his flank. I think this is Duke, a K9 police dog who went missing during a training exercise 2 months ago." Eleanor's eyes widened. "A police dog? But why didn't he show up when they scanned for a microchip?" "That's what worries me," Jenny said, her voice low. "The intake record says the scanner found nothing. It's possible the chip migrated, or that someone intentionally overlooked it." The words hung in the air between them. Neither of them could have known that this discovery would lead them to a web of corruption far larger than the animal shelter, and that a terrified Doberman held the key to unraveling it all. Officer Jason Reeves had been searching for his partner, Duke, for 8 weeks. Duke had vanished during a training exercise in a rural area, disappearing into a dense forest. The official report suggested he had likely been attacked by a predator or had an accident in the rugged terrain. But Jason never accepted that conclusion. He's too well trained to just get lost. He had insisted to his superiors, "If he'd been attacked, we would have found something." When Jason received the call from Jenny, he broke every speed limit getting to the shelter. The security camera captured the moment he walked into the office where Duke was staying. The Doberman's reaction was immediate and astounding. Despite his traumatized state, Duke's ears shot up, and his body went tense. Then, in a heart-wrenching moment of recognition, he bolted across the room and pressed himself against Jason's legs, letting out a series of whining cries. "Where have you been, partner?" Jason whispered, sinking to his knees and wrapping his arms around Duke, who trembled in his embrace, a mix of joy and the terror of his recent ordeal. A subsequent veterinary examination revealed a shocking fact: Duke's microchip had been surgically removed. Shaving a small patch of fur on his shoulder revealed a partially healed incision. He had lost 15 pounds and, in addition to his psychological trauma, showed signs of having been confined in a small space for an extended period. "This wasn't a stray dog picked up by animal control," Jenny explained as she went over the vet's findings. "Someone deliberately took him, removed his chip, and kept him somewhere before he either escaped or was dumped near the highway." The situation immediately escalated. The theft and abuse of a police K9 was a federal crime. Within hours, local police and the FBI were at the shelter, collecting evidence, including the security footage of Marcus striking Duke. Under questioning, Marcus claimed he knew nothing, insisting Duke was just a stray he had found. But his phone records told a different story, revealing communications with individuals linked to a statewide dogfighting ring. While Duke showed no signs of having been fought, investigators theorized he was likely stolen for his superior genetics, intended to be used for breeding or to train other dogs. During the initial investigation, Eleanor remained at the shelter, helping to document and care for the other animals Marcus may have abused. One evening, as she was preparing to leave, she saw Tony with an FBI agent, reviewing additional security footage. "There's something not right here," Tony said, playing a clip from the night 2 days before Duke was officially found. The grainy footage showed a shelter vehicle returning late at night. Marcus and another figure could be seen getting a Doberman out of the van. He didn't find Duke as a stray, Eleanor realized. He brought him here himself and faked the intake record. The FBI agent nodded grimly. "We need to find out why. Why go to the trouble of removing a chip and bringing him to a shelter? It suggests a purpose clearer than just wanting to get rid of him." As the investigation widened, evidence of a larger conspiracy emerged. Duke wasn't the only specially trained dog to have gone missing recently. A pattern was discovered of falsified paperwork at other shelters. Not just Oak Ridge County, valuable service animals were being stolen, their identities erased, and then processed through shelters with inside help from employees like Marcus. The lingering question was, why? The answer, it turned out, would come from Duke himself in a most unexpected way. In the 2 weeks after his reunion with Jason, Duke began the slow process of rehabilitation. His mental scars ran deeper than his physical ones. He had severe anxiety in enclosed spaces and panicked whenever Jason was out of sight. Signs that pointed to prolonged confinement and isolation. "This is common in trauma cases," explained Dr. Mira Santos, a veterinary behaviorist, but his strong training foundation and the bond he shares with Jason give him an advantage many traumatized animals don't have. Jason took a leave of absence from regular duty to focus on Duke's recovery, converting his garage into a comfortable, open space where Duke could relax without feeling trapped. Eleanor became a regular visitor, having formed a bond with Duke during that critical time at the shelter. During one of her visits, Eleanor noticed a strange reaction from Duke. When she set down her backpack, which contained her veterinary textbooks, Duke went on high alert, his nose twitching as he focused intensely on the bag. "What is it, boy?" Jason asked, recognizing the same focused posture Duke used when searching for narcotics on the job. Carefully, Eleanor opened her backpack. "It's just my pharmacology books and notes. We're studying drug classifications this semester." Jason's expression changed. His narcotics unit had been investigating a new synthetic drug circulating in the region, and he and Duke had been part of several raids right before he disappeared. This observation led to a carefully planned test. Under controlled conditions, various scents were presented to Duke, including samples from a pharmacology lab. His response was unmistakable. He had a strong, clear reaction to a specific compound used in the manufacturing of the new synthetic drug. They took him because of what he knows. Jason realized, someone knew Duke could detect their product and saw him as a threat. The FBI integrated this information, expanding their investigation to focus on the link between the dog theft ring and the drug manufacturing operation. An analysis of soil samples taken from Duke's paws revealed trace chemical elements related to drug production and specific mineral markers, which helped narrow the geographic search area. Meanwhile, the Oak Ridge shelter was undergoing rapid changes. The investigation had uncovered multiple violations, and the county board approved emergency funding for improved staff training and facility upgrades. After Tony Grayson resigned over the supervisory failures, Jenny was promoted to interim director and began implementing new protocols for animal care and security. Eleanor, having demonstrated exceptional skill, was offered a paid position coordinating volunteer training. 4 months after Duke was found, the FBI conducted a series of coordinated raids on several properties identified in the investigation. They not only dismantled the drug operation but also recovered several missing dogs, including 2 other police canines that, like Duke, had been stolen for their ability to detect the specific chemicals. The raids also uncovered evidence of a corruption network that included a county official who oversaw funding for animal control. Through it all, Duke continued to recover, slowly regaining his confidence. Jason documented the process, sharing updates that brought public attention to animal welfare and the special needs of traumatized pets. The events, which began with a single act of cruelty caught on camera, had grown into a movement that would save countless animal lives. 6 months after Duke's rescue from the shelter, the criminal case against Marcus and his associates was expanding, with charges ranging from animal cruelty to drug trafficking and public corruption. Through the legal proceedings, Duke remained a symbol of resilience, his story becoming a catalyst for changing how law enforcement approached animal welfare cases. As autumn painted the trees at the training facility in gold and crimson, Jason and Duke were embarking on a new challenge. With the support of the police department and a grant secured with Eleanor's help, they were developing a special program where Duke would serve as a rehabilitation partner for traumatized animals being processed as evidence in abuse cases. "He understands them in a way a human can't," Jason explained, watching as Duke worked with a recently rescued terrier mix that had been cowering in its kennel for days, refusing food and human contact. "He's been where they are." Eleanor, now finishing her veterinary degree and working part-time at the reformed Oak Ridge shelter, documented the astonishing results. Animals paired with Duke showed reduced stress, increased sociability, and better responses to rehabilitation techniques. His very presence sent a message that no human could convey: "You're safe now." "I know. It gets better." That day's session was particularly significant. The terrier had been rescued from one of the properties raided as part of the investigation Duke had triggered. Like many abused animals, it displayed extreme fear responses, making medical treatment and basic care difficult. Duke approached with the careful body language he had perfected for these encounters, head held slightly low, movements slow, broadcasting peaceful intent from a respectful distance. The terrier, which had growled and retreated from every human approach, watched Duke with cautious interest. After several minutes of this delicate dance, Duke lay down a few feet from the terrier's kennel, positioning himself where the smaller dog could observe him without feeling threatened. Jason and Eleanor moved further back, documenting without interfering. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the terrier's posture shifted from defensive to curious. By the end of the session, it had crept to the front of its kennel and, for the first time since its rescue, accepted a piece of food in the presence of an observer. "That's the 4th breakthrough this week," Eleanor said, updating her records. "The prosecutor's team is calling Duke's evidence revolutionary for building animal welfare cases." The before and after footage helps judges understand the psychological impact of abuse in a way written reports never could. The program was expanding beyond their initial hopes. What started as Duke's rehabilitation had evolved into a pioneering approach to animal welfare in a legal context. Other departments were sending representatives to learn their techniques, planning to implement similar programs with recovered canines that could no longer serve in traditional police roles. "There's one more thing," Jason said as he led Duke back to their transport vehicle. "The department's community outreach division wants to make Duke the face of a new educational program about animal welfare and reporting suspected abuse. They think his story will help people connect with the issue on an emotional level." Eleanor smiled. From victim to advocate. It's perfect. Though they didn't speak it, they both understood how Duke's journey had reshaped their own lives. Jason had found a new purpose beyond traditional police work, becoming a sought-after expert at the intersection of animal welfare and law enforcement. Eleanor had discovered her career path in veterinary medicine, focusing on forensics and trauma recovery, and already had multiple job offers waiting for her after graduation. The courtroom fell silent as Duke entered alongside Jason. Despite months of preparation, there had been concern about how he would react in a formal environment filled with people connected to his trauma. But Duke walked confidently beside his handler, a testament to a recovery that once seemed impossible. This hearing was the culmination of the sweeping investigation that had uncovered corruption stretching from local animal control to state-level regulatory agencies. Marcus Davis, whose abuser Duke was caught on camera, was just one cog in a network that had exploited the shelter system to hide its drug operations and systematic theft of service animals. Duke's presence in the courtroom today served multiple purposes. It was not only for his symbolic importance to the case but also to showcase the pioneering courtroom support dog protocol Jason and Eleanor had developed with legal and behavioral experts. The approach, which was being considered for adoption nationwide in animal welfare cases, allowed a recovered animal to be present during proceedings without causing them stress or disrupting the court. As Duke settled onto a designated mat near the witness stand, the judge addressed the assembled court. "I want to acknowledge the unique nature of today's proceedings. The presence of this particular service animal has been approved due to his unique connection to this case and the potential precedent it may set for future animal welfare litigation." Eleanor sat in the gallery, filled with pride as she watched Duke maintain his calm demeanor. She remembered their first meeting in the shelter's supply closet, a dog so terrified he couldn't make eye contact, hiding behind a pile of blankets. His transformation was more than a personal victory, it was a demonstration of the potential for healing in even the most broken victims. The prosecution methodically presented its evidence, including the security camera footage that started it all, as the video of Marcus striking Duke played on the courtroom monitors. Duke's ears twitched at the sound, but Jason's reassuring presence and their extensive desensitization training kept him calm. Expert witnesses detailed how the investigation grew from a single incident to unraveling a criminal enterprise that used shelters as processing points for specially trained animals that were either valuable or a threat to their operation. A veterinary forensics expert detailed how Duke's medical exam provided key evidence, from the removed microchip to the trace chemicals that helped pinpoint the location of the drug lab. When Jason took the stand, Duke remained postured nearby, a living testament to both the trauma he had suffered and the healing that was possible with the right intervention. "In your professional opinion, officer," the prosecutor asked, "what do you believe would have happened to Duke had his abuse not been caught on camera?" Jason considered the question carefully. "Based on the pattern we established in the investigation, Duke would have been passed through the shelter system under the false identity of Maverick, likely moved to another facility controlled by the network or put up for adoption. His valuable training would have been lost, or he could have been eliminated if his ability to detect their drugs was deemed too great a risk." The words settled heavily in the courtroom. How many other animals had been processed through similar routes? How many service animals had simply vanished, if not for the determination that propelled Duke's case forward? As the hearing concluded for the day, reporters gathered outside, hoping for a picture of the Doberman who had sparked the investigation. Jason and Eleanor, working with the prosecution, used the media attention for an educational approach, highlighting the broader issues of animal welfare and the importance of community reporting of suspected abuse. Duke's story resonates because it shows a journey from victim to advocate. Eleanor explained to a journalist as they left the courthouse, "But the bigger message is about the systems that failed him before he was saved, and the importance of community vigilance in preventing these cases from happening in the first place." What no one could have predicted was that Duke's case would go on to inspire legislative change. Lawmakers began drafting bills to provide stronger protections for service animals and mandate stricter oversight of shelter operations. A movement was born from the story of one animal, with an impact that would extend far beyond the single act of cruelty caught on camera. On a sunny day 2 years after Duke's rescue from the Oak Ridge County shelter, a ribbon-cutting ceremony celebrated the opening of the Duke Center for Dignity, Animal Rehabilitation and Training. Built on repurposed county land with a combination of government funds and private donations, the facility stood as the tangible outcome of a case that had transformed animal welfare practices across the state. Duke, now 9 years old and fully recovered from his ordeal, sat attentively by Jason's side. A patch of white around his graying muzzle gave him a distinguished look that complemented the special therapy dog vest he wore as the center's canine ambassador. Eleanor, who had earned her veterinary degree and now served as the center's medical director, watched nearby, forever struck by the contrast between the terrified dog she'd found hiding in a supply closet and the confident Doberman before her. The Duke Center for Dignity served multiple functions. It was a rehabilitation facility for animals rescued from abuse, a training academy for law enforcement and animal control officers, and a community educational resource. Most innovatively, it housed the service dog recovery program that Duke had inspired, a specialized approach to rehabilitating and retraining service and working animals that had experienced trauma, preparing them for new roles. After the ceremony, visitors toured the facility, learning about the programs born from Duke's case. In the rehabilitation wing, rescued animals received expert care to address their physical and psychological trauma. The training academy offered certification courses for animal welfare professionals, emphasizing evidence-based approaches to abuse investigation and recovery support. At the heart of it all was the bond between handler and animal. Personified by Jason and Duke, their partnership had evolved from traditional police work to pioneering the new field of animal-assisted rehabilitation. They had worked with dozens of traumatized animals, helping them reconnect with humans and, when possible, return to service in modified roles suited to their experiences. As the day's official events concluded, Jason and Eleanor found a quiet moment away from the crowd, watching Duke in the rehabilitation yard as he demonstrated calming signals to a recently rescued Border Collie. "Remember when I thought success meant just getting him back into police work?" Jason said with a smile, watching Duke coax the timid dog toward a training obstacle. Eleanor nodded. He found a different purpose, maybe the one he was meant for all along. The investigation sparked by Duke's case led to significant convictions for Marcus Davis and several higher-level operators. More importantly, it exposed the systemic vulnerabilities that allowed shelters and service animals to be exploited. The reforms that followed, including enhanced security protocols, better training for shelter staff, and a specialized tracking system for service animals, were now a permanent part of the system. Duke would never know the full impact of his story, that a single moment of cruelty, caught on camera, had unleashed a chain of events that would change an entire system. But as he guided another traumatized animal on its path toward recovery, his actions spoke to the truth that had emerged from his journey, that the deepest wounds can sometimes give rise to the greatest capacity to heal others. The Doberman who once cowered at the strike of a frustrated handler now stood as a living monument to resilience. His presence communicated to wounded animals and the humans who cared for them that trauma does not have to define a life, that fear can be overcome, and that purpose can be found even after the most profound betrayals. As the day ended and the visitors left, Duke returned to the home he shared with Jason, resting for the work that would come tomorrow. The security cameras that once captured his moment of victimization now served a different purpose, documenting success stories and training techniques. From a single act of cruelty, a legacy of compassion had been born, one that would last for years to come. It was a reminder that the most powerful advocates for change are often those who have themselves endured the very conditions they help transform. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe to the channel and give it a like. Share it with someone who needs to see that when we refuse to look away from suffering, and when we channel our anger into positive action, an unexpected light can emerge. Every animal deserves dignity, and every act of compassion matters. 69.0s